What's going on, everyone? Tanner Poppitt here, Madrost and Poppitt's Corner. Just reminding you guys that for the first time ever, Madrost's sophomore album, Into the Aquatic Sector, is now being reissued for the first time on a 2 CD set and vinyl LP. Now, with the CD set, will include a live bonus disc, a live soundboard recording entitled Live Aquatic from that specific era of the band's career. Available now only at NoLifeTomatoRecords.com. What was that link again? Oh, yeah, NoLifeTomatoRecords.com. Now, let's check out the episode you came to see. What's going on, everyone? Welcome to another episode of Poppitt's Corner. I'm thoroughly excited to be bringing on Mr. Shannon Fry, of course, and the wonderful, the great Alejandro Pelaez. How you doing, guys? Thanks for coming on and hanging. Appreciate you both. How we doing?
Doing well, thank you. Thanks for having me, Tanner. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. This is going to hit a little closer to home for us too, personally here, and I want to thank you, obviously, in advance for doing this with me and helping me tell some stories from this era, because I always felt from this particular era of the band's career, it just doesn't get talked about a heck of a lot. And I want to kind of just, I don't know, just have some fun and reminisce. So if you guys are ready, I'd love to get started. Obviously, we're going to be talking about, the reissue of the, I guess I should just bring up the artwork itself, but we're going to be discussing the reissue of the newly remastered Into the Aquatic Sector record, right? So right off the bat, I think Shannon has a couple of questions, so I'll let him start this off. Yeah.
All right, so let's go back to this. Let's go back to the starting of this album and the writing process. Do you remember the first song you wrote? And was there a particular direction that you were aiming at going forward?
Well, so, oh my gosh.
I think most of this was already written by the time I joined, if that was the case.
I think the first song was Universal Energy that I wrote for this, because I wrote all the songs except for the intro was written and played by Peter, and I can't ever remember his name. But obviously, Alejandro plays in a band with him, Dino Grave.
Peter Demore?
Yes, Peter Demore. Obviously, he produced this with Sean and Adrian. As far as the recording process goes, so I think Universal Energy was the first one written, and then obviously the Oceanic Prelude was written by Alejandro. Which we'll get more into that at obviously later down the line on this interview. But yeah, that to me is the first. I think that was the first track written, was Universal Energy, and the direction of this is a lot more angrier, because you got to think at that specific juncture in my specific life, what was happening around that time is we didn't have a band when all this was kind of transpired. So we were doing, it was like the rebuilding process. So I was a little bit more angry than what I am now, and it certainly shows on this record. So I think the direction would be, I wanted to get angrier. I wanted to make a better record than we did on the Maleficent record.
Okay. All right. So going into the recording then, so how long did it take you to write the whole album?
It took a couple months. We went in and played. I think we played Thrasher to Mile. Then Alejandro joined like a couple weeks after that, and I think we just started hashing out the songs and I would bring a whole song into the rehearsal space, and we would hash it out and pretty much form the songs into how they were recorded. Now, I don't know why we picked Overboard sound recordings. Maybe Alejandro can fill that gap in, but I think that was his connection as far as that goes.
Yeah, so I met Peter through school when I was going to Fullerton College. I was in a recording class with him, and then he invited me over to his studio, because he's a guitar player. He found out I played guitar, and we bonded over that. And then he showed me the stuff he had been working on, and I thought, hey, maybe we can come and record here because we were looking for a place to record, and that's how that happened. we were their first metal band client. We were their first actual like major full length album client, I believe.
And during this time, I'm going to add to some of this stuff. So it was in like a business complex in Fullerton from my
warehouses.
So they were building this studio, like they were building it as we were recording it. So they had some certain pieces in place, like they had the engineer room, they had the room for the drums and the amps and whatnot, and it's all documented. I have the DVD, which I should put out there again and actually press it and make legit copies of it. But we did a behind the scenes thing. You remember that, Alejandro?
Yeah. I remember eating the cookies that your mom would bake for us. That's the one part I do remember the most. The chocolate chip cookies.
What was it called? A Poppitt dozen. My mom used to make cookies, and we would call it a Poppitt dozen. So you'd have, I think a baker's dozen was what, 12 or 13. She'd add like 14 or 15. That would be a Poppitt dozen, a little extra. But so this studio was being built as we were recording, so it was ever changing, from my understanding. And I think they had we played there too. They had like a showcase in that rehearsal space, so it was almost like a riff house type of thing, except it wasn't a rehearsal space. It was a recording studio. So the recording process, I think it was fairly quick. I want to say it was like a month or two tops.
Yeah, I don't know. You were more involved in that. I just came in on the days that I had to record my parts, and from what I remember, it was like 4 days top. But I remember you being there like every day, and then seeing the messages go back and forth, communication about scheduling and whatnot. So I know it was very active, but on my end, I was there for like maybe 4 or 5 days at the most, actually recording. And if I was there any other time, it'd just be basically hanging out and seeing what's going on.
And that communication was key for me, just to get everybody involved and just make sure we were all on the same page on what was going on, because that was like one thing that I wanted to change from the previous lineup and whatnot, was the communication, because I felt like that was one area that could have been improved on. So obviously we kept everybody in the loop as far as that goes. But yeah, I think it was a couple months, and I mean, there were long nights. Let me just put it that way.
Yeah, communication is a huge thing. It's huge.
I think most of the time was really allocated towards the back end of stuff. So like mixing and mastering and doing all that. I think that's what the bulk of the time was. It wasn't recording, at least from what I could recall.
And this is an album too that we used real amplifiers on. It's like the only one that that I was using. We were using our live rig for the guitar tones. From my understanding, from my recollection, I think that's what we did. We used a DI, and on top of that, our live rig, because we wanted it to sound like how we sound live.
Understandable. Yeah, that's a cool way of going at it. It sounds good. Sounds really good. What did you think as it was turning out? Were you happy with the process as it was going? While the recording process was happening, I mean, was it a fairly easy process? And were you enjoying it at this time?
I'll let Alejandro take that one.
I had a good time recording. I had fun, although it did really. I learned a lot from it, as in once you start recording yourself, you realize how shitty of a guitar player you really are, and how much more practice you need to go out and go and do. So that happening alone, I enjoyed that aspect. I flipped that into a positive things, like, okay, well, now I have room to grow instead of, I'm not at where I think I am musically. So that's one thing I do appreciate from recording. To sorry, I went off on a little tangent there. But to answer your question, I had fun. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed my time there, you know, and I was working with friends. So like at the end of the day, you know, what's more fun than having to work on a project with someone, you know, cares about music and, you know, you're friends with. You have that relationship, you know?
Right. Yeah, and it helps you grow as a person too. But there wasn't any tensions or anything? Did you go through any of that?
If there was, it was just within myself. Like I said, you know, realizing and hearing yourself how you actually sound on a recording, it's very frustrating, and you kind of like, man, maybe I'm not at the level I thought I was, and I really do need to put in the work. So if there was any tension or frustration, it was like onto myself for not being at the caliber that I should be at playing wise in my guitar skills.
I got you. Yeah. How about you, Tanner?
So the tension for me came with working with Peter, and Peter's a great engineer, but there were things that like he was wanting that I wasn't wanting. It was just that back and forth dynamic, and we were just there was some tension. At least that's just my recollection. So, and there's no bad blood by any stretch of the imagination, but there were things that I wanted to be portrayed on this album that wasn't getting done during the process. So there was a lot of back and forth, I remember, during this. And I think Alejandro was in on those group chats as well. But I remember like one instance where we were okay, prime example. So I was typically always there when all the guys were recording, because I was filming that, like just having a making of documentary, because I just felt like, how cool is this if people are interested in that specific lineup or era of the band's career, that there's like something documented. So I was putting together of the visual aspect as well as recording. So I was doing both. So it was a little bit, I mean, like I said, it was a little stressful for me, and I was doing long nights with Peter and Sean, and they're phenomenal producers. I really enjoyed working with them. But there were some tensions with that, because Richard, at the specific moment in time, you know, he was frustrated like Alejandro with his playing. He's grown obviously a lot since then. They both have, but at that particular time, I remember Richard getting really frustrated because he couldn't nail the parts down on time, so he kept having to like record it again. So I remember a lot of that happening.
Well, yeah, okay. But I didn't mean that to sound negative at all. I didn't at all.
No. But that's the truth. So I think this was Alejandro's first album as well. It's like,
yeah, it was. Well, overall, it was a learning experience for everyone, because this too was also the first time Peter and Sean had actually tackled on a large project like this, and they learned, you know, it was their first time. So we were all essentially, the band and everyone involved we were all doing it. Well, Tanner recorded an album beforehand, and I believe Caesar has done some work too. But basically, we're all just starting from the beginning together and working on something, you know.
Right. So let's go to the release. When it was released, how did you feel now that you get this album cover? And well, let's go to that. How did the album cover come about?
Okay, so let me finish off here real quick. I guess I got to mention this too. So initially, the first draft of Into the Aquatic Sector, I wasn't happy with the mixing and mastering of it. So I want to throw this out there too. Matt from Xanthroid actually mixed and mastered this. So Peter and Sean recorded it for us, and we sent it off to mixing mastering with Matt of Xanthroid, who obviously gave us the product, the mix that you're hearing today, right? So I want to just throw that out there too. I got to give everybody credit where credit is due. Now, with the album cover, my friend Alejandro Leon, this is where it gets a little complicated with the two Alejandros. But so essentially, we went to high school together. So he drew our first two album covers. Obviously, the Maleficent one is still one of my favorites. In our
turquoise.
Yeah, I dug it. So it's just, we wanted to use them again to get a little bit more colorful, I guess, on the next one. And that's certainly what happened. It was done on a canvas. So it was a canvas painting. I have the original somewhere in a frame. I have to dig it out in my archives, but essentially that's what it was because, like I said, we went to high school together, and I just loved his work. He's done like all my tattoos and whatnot. So yeah, I just wanted to use him, and especially during that time too, because I didn't know a lot of people. You know, I wasn't like well versed in my connections. Like I'm sure as Alejandro can voice that as well. He learned a lot since then, and probably didn't have as many connections as he does now. So
I still do. I'm so focused on practicing. I neglect the networking and connection side of things. Same like I said, we just spend so much time practicing that we forget that other aspect of it. Well, the business side of things, you know.
Sure, but my point in all this is we utilized what we had at that specific time, and I also want to throw this out there too. And I'm going on some tangents here, but I gotta at least document this stuff. So I really feel like Into the Aquatic Sector showcased all of our talents in one, and I think that's why it's held up really well in people's opinions. Like this is. I've been reading online this, they're all excited for this reissue because it's their favorite Madrost album. And I'm like, so grateful for obviously for that too. I wouldn't necessarily agree, but also I'm not the listener, so it doesn't really matter anyways. But what I will say is, I mean, you have parts where it showcases the bass guitar, right? Because Richard originally recorded the first Tormentor album, Pulse of Terror. He was the bass player on it. So that was his first record. And obviously Into the Aquatic was his second. So he was still kind of wet behind the ears on recording and getting better all the time. So I knew he could just shine through on with his bass playing. And so there are certain parts that I wrote for the bass. There are certain parts that I wrote for the guitar and the drums and vocal aspects. But there's also the classical piece, the Oceanic Prelude, which Alejandro wrote, which I'm so grateful, that he has the talent to do more classical work. So I would like to at least touch upon that specific song, if I may, before we get to your specific question. So, Alejandro, I'm kind of curious, when approaching the Oceanic Prelude, what was your thinking? Because we got to remember this too. This was kind of like a concept album as well that most people don't even know. So I think I went over the concept with you before the song was written.
Yeah, dude, to be honest with you, I don't remember, and I don't know. I don't even know how, because writing music is, I'm so obsessed with technique. That's all I practice. And as a classical musician, anything I do musically, I just read the notes on the page. I don't really write or compose. So that is a huge territory I've neglected in my career of playing. And even at that point, it was very intimidating. And I honestly don't know how I wrote. I don't remember the process at all. I just knew I don't know. The pressure was there. Like, I need to fucking write this. So I just did that. I think I approached my friend Miles, who now he played in a band called Animus, I think. And when we were on tour, I actually ran into him in Salt Lake City. His band was also playing a show that night. Miles Baker, Dimitri Baker, who's another guitar player who I'm buddies with, we met through when I was working at Home Depot. So I was hanging out with him one time, and I was like, "Hey, can you help me write this?" And I showed him a little progression, and then he told me I think he told me about some musical ideas, specifically with ornamentation, like trills and whatnot, and where to add them, and to make it more of a musically sounding piece. But honestly, the inspiration was just the pressure to get it done and to go in to record it. Really, that's my tendencies. I wait till the last minute to do something, and the pressure, just any form of pressure, is what really motivates me to get whatever I need to do done. So
do you remember?
I don't know.
Do you remember how long that song took you to write, to compose?
I don't know.
I want to say, let me help with this if you don't mind. I remember when Alejandro because we had this idea. I was telling Alejandro, like, hey, I would love to utilize your classical skills and get a classical piece on this record, because during this specific point, I was always encouraging the guys to bring in their ideas and write and help me, write the riffs and whatnot. So this was an aspect I could not do. I could not play classical guitar, but Alejandro was going to school for it, and I wanted to utilize that specific skill aspect, that set of skills there, and he brought me in. I don't think that I had ever heard it until it was recorded, so that should tell you something as well. So I think he literally went
that's
in.
what it was. That's the pressure part too, because I knew Tanner hadn't heard anything, and I was going in to record it, and I was like, oh well, fuck, I need to, I can't fuck this up. So we came out with that,
right? And I think this. So when I initially heard it, I was like, this is fucking awesome. And it still is. It's still one of my favorite pieces in our catalog and whatnot. But I remember being there as I think I was there as it was getting recorded or what like I said, my memory's kind of hazy at this point, but I want to say I was there when you were
I'm sure you
it.
were. Like I said, you were involved in like pretty much the whole project from day one. So I mean, I'm sure you were there. I'm pretty sure you were.
But I remember it being done in one take. So like he only literally probably did it twice. And that when one of the times it was recorded. So Alejandro could, tell me if I'm wrong on this aspect, but I believe it was done in one or two takes.
I think so. I don't recall, but I also remember it didn't take as long as I thought it would.
Because all the rhythm guitars were already done, and I think this was like the final piece to the recording process, if I'm not mistaken, because the drums were recorded first, right? Then the guitars, bass, and then the classical piece, and obviously vocals were in there somewhere. Now, I can't remember what Shannon's question was beforehand because I went on some tangents there, but essentially, like I said, I just wanted to put some of the stuff documented for us later on the recording process of this. So, yeah, the cover. So we had the concept. I had the concept lyrically speaking with what I wanted to do. It's actually a story about underwater aliens. So if you put certain songs together, it creates a story, but they're all out of order because it wouldn't sound good as a whole, right? I wanted the record to kind of just blend really well together. So certain pieces are mixed and matched, but there's a hidden gem for you folks. There's actually, if you put 4 songs together, it creates the story. So it's going to throw that out there. Fun fact.
Yeah, I didn't even know that.
So did you want the album cover to resemble the concept?
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. It's a reflection not only of the title track into the Aquatic Sector, but it's also a reflection of human society that we're in. And it's so funny that it's held up so well because if you would have told me that all this shit would have transpired years later after coming up with this concept, I probably would have said you're full of shit, but it happened, and it seems like the covers held up really well. So, yeah, my whole concept to this too is because I heard a fact or like a statistic where we only know like 1% of the ocean or 10% of the ocean and 1% of the universe, something to that effect. And I was like, what if there were underwater aliens? What if there's a whole society underwater that we didn't know about, And it came and it was camouflaging themselves in our bodies and then going to take over the world, right? So that's the whole concept to what Into the Aquatic Sector is.
Very cool.
And I was writing the songs really fast too. So it was just one after another, because we were kind of thrown into the recording studio. It was like, we need to get this done now because I think one of the guys had a deadline. I think Peter or Sean or something had a deadline that we needed to get it done. And there's also a point of contention too, where, like I said, there were some tensions with some of us not being able to play the parts, to a T, getting frustrated. So there were a couple songs. I want to say the title track, Into the Aquatic Sector, and Frozen Beneath the Snow, I did all the rhythm guitars to it. And then obviously Alejandro did the solo to the title track, which again, is fucking awesome. And it was also the first time too where we added clean guitars in the middle of a song. So that was a whole fucking process as well, because I didn't know how to do that. You know, play it cleanly and think of like what kind of guitar tones I wanted to use guitar wise. Right? That was a whole fucking process, man.
So how long were you guys connected at the time in the band before you had gone in to record this album?
Well, I think we were friends before this too. Alejandro and I met.
I was actually a fan before I was in the band, years before I was even involved. I was like 4 or 5 years before I was even involved in the band. I was a huge fan back when there was like a thrash revival. I don't know, back when I was in high school. I think Tanner was still in high school. Hoagie Barmichaels was the first show I saw you at, Madrost play at, and that place has been shut down. It's been years, but I was like a sophomore in high school when I first heard the band, and then you know, ever since being a fan, it's like, oh man, that'd be cool if I played in that band one day, and then eventually it fucking happened.
And I kind of want to touch upon this aspect, Alejandro, and get some perspective from you on this. Is originally you approached us to do like a compilation, and it was like at the right moment when I knew shit was getting, going down. So that's kind of how we connected as well. We worked on like a project. So
at the time, what Tanner's referring to right now, at the time I got really into fucking black metal, and the one thing that black metal led to was this whole underground scene of like people who make zines and mail it out, and there's like an underground mailing list where they trade, tape trading, and I tried to get involved in that, and I had no demo tapes. It's like, well, I'm not in a band, I don't do anything, so what's the next thing I can do? It's like, well, I know a lot of fucking local bands. Why don't I start my own zine and start interviewing bands and then, sending them out and try to make those connections and be a part of the underground scene in some way? Because I wanted to be involved in music, in the scene one way or another. And like I said, I wasn't in a band at the time. So I had lined up interviews with bands locally. I don't know, do you remember Cataclysmic Spawn? They're a local band from where I'm from, Anaheim, and I interviewed them. Do you remember fucking Chris from Huntington Beach? What was it? Imminent Death? I interviewed them. And somehow I made connections with a dude out in Utah. Jacob, I forgot what his name was. Art Romero, I think. I got to get his info back. But he even sent me free artwork that I could use for the publication. And because we made the connection. He really liked my idea and he believed in it, and he sent me that. And then he put me in contact with another guy out in like Idaho or Iowa who was trying to do the same thing. And he had demo discs and he was distributing them around the country. And I got him to put Madrost tracks on there. I'm skipping ahead. Before I did that, anyways, before I got that connection, I had interviewed Tanner and for the zine, and after the interview was done, he was telling me how there's no guitar player, and that's when I was like, oh shit, you don't have a guitar player? Like, what are you looking for? And then that's when I approached him about possibly auditioning to join the band.
And this was like right at like 2013, I want to say. Like it was like literally right place, right time. So I'm we're eternally grateful, obviously, to be friends at this point, because it's been so long. But you guys but your fanzine also used a famous artist, I believe, called Ravager, and
that's who it was. Ravager. That's who I got in contact with, and he gave me all like art. He let me choose artwork, and he sent it to me, and I could use it for free. I should probably go back and at least publish the first issue. I think that's well deserved for that. I had it ready to go. I think I should go back and do that. But it's gonna need some revisit and some rework because that's over like 10 years old.
Well, sure, but I just wanted to throw it out there too. Like you were establishing connections with. I mean, he's pretty famous in the underground scene. I mean, if you've never heard of like Mark Riddick or Ravager or artists like that, I mean, you probably haven't been in the scene very long, but just to educate folks out there, that was a really prominent figure during that specific time.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't even remember how I got that connection. I don't know how we got linked up, but yeah, we established that connection. And it was great. It was like I said, I had the first issue ready to go, and then I just got busy with life.
And you also put out compilations as well, which we should mention too. But
I did not know. I got Madrost on a compilation.
Oh,
the dying volume records or whatever. That's the other connection I made on Facebook to try to help with the zine that I mentioned earlier.
Gotcha.
Oh, wow. That's cool. That's a cool story.
Fuck yeah, dude. Now, let's go to another aspect that I've wanted to kind of touch upon and whatnot. And so we get the album done. It gets remixed and remastered, essentially, comes out, and we start to do the tour for it. Now, I think it was like a 10-day tour, if I'm not mistaken. And it was the first time that, like, I mean, it was the first time that Alejandro at least got to do a tour. So in your first tour experience, what were you expecting versus what you actually got?
I don't know. I knew there would be a lot of driving and a lot of waiting. So I guess I kind of already knew what to look forward to. I was just stoked to play fucking shows for people. That's all I cared about, really. But yeah, it's just you guys supporting yourself out there. It kind of sucks, but you have each other, and you make it work. Yeah, when you don't have like a big record label backing you and you're all independent, yeah, it kind of sucks. But at that point, you're not, you're in it for the art, really. You're not, you're doing what you're doing. I was fucking happy enough just to be on a tour, just to get that experience.
Fueling that hunger.
Yeah.
Fueling that hunger.
Yeah.
And so we do the tour. And we get to know each other even more so than probably what we want to. Even let's go before this. Let's talk about the photo shoot, if we can. Right? Obviously.
Well, what about how I even became an official member of the band?
Well, okay, go ahead.
How first practice when I came in? Do you remember?
No.
Anyways, I'm coming in worried because, it's like, oh, fuck, man, I don't have a half stack. My gear is shit. I have this fucking little Marshall 100 watt MG amp solid state amp. Like, my tone sucks. I'm like, I'm nervous. I'm worried. And, Tanner, you know him. He's all like, hey, man, what's up? All happy, friendly, go lucky. And it's like, all right, cool. He's helping me. I'm a little bit at ease. He's, I feel accepted and open. And then I just played through the fucking songs that he had sent me. I think I did okay. I don't know. And then, he didn't say anything afterwards. And it wasn't until I think later that week when he calls me, he's like, hey, we have a show tomorrow. Can you do it? And I was like, yeah, I'm down. We can try. And so at that show that same day, I approached Tanner and I told him, like, hey, dude, I've never played a show before, like, ever at a venue. I've never done it.
Wow.
And Tanner got fucking nervous. He's like, what? I was like, yeah, dude, I've never, ever played a show before. This is my first time. He didn't tell the rest of the band. But we ended up, him and I were the only ones that knew that I've never played a show in front of a crowd at a venue ever in my life. And then later that night, I made it into the band.
Do you remember the ritual we did? Because this is one aspect I do remember.
Where we smoked the joint in the parking lot out back.
All four of us took. We had one joint, and we all partook in the joint ritual process, and we made him an official member. I believe that was Richard's idea, and Richard told you, "Hey, welcome to the fold." I think Richard was the guy that told you.
I think so too.
Wow,
Yeah.
that's
a cool story there.
And that was at the joint in Hollywood. I think, was it Hollywood? I think it was Hollywood.
Yeah. It was. It's no longer around anymore. It turned into the Black Rose Tavern, and then I think it's just a restaurant now. But you also too remember this. So there was a Andy Ford of Razor Radio was broadcasting his shows from that place too. So there was like this staircase where it led to the mixing board, but it also was a radio station. So it was like a cross between a venue, bar, restaurant, and a radio station. That place was really cool. I'm sad it's no longer with us, but grateful that we got to experience that.
I'm very lucky. I'm very grateful too for that place, and to play my first show ever there.
Wow, dude, I had no idea until now.
Do you remember here's a good question for you. Do you remember what bands that you played with that show?
I remember one of the bands outside while what Tanner was just referring to earlier was going down. There was a band there on tour from New York. I can't recall their name, but I remember they were from New York. They played before us. I don't remember who they were, but that's all I remember is that they were on tour from New York.
It wasn't the Fenders Ballroom Band show, was it? I can't remember what it.
No.
Where the band did a bunch of covers. Okay, yeah.
No, it wasn't that.
So okay, well, yeah, you stumped me. So no idea. That was a long time ago, right? Now moving forward, I'd like to tackle the photo shoot and just get your recollections on how that all transpired and when you originally first met Adrian for the first time.
I like I said, being a fan of Madrost, anytime a lot of big shows were going down, they would normally be playing that bill, and I would see Adrian there. So I knew of Adrian before, but I didn't really get to know him until I was in the band and involved with stuff with him, like our photo shoots and whatnot. And obviously every show we had while I was there, at least he was there recording, filming, and doing whatever he could to contribute to the scene and keep it alive and keep it going.
And was he initially when he would take the photos and whatnot? What was your recollections as far as like him coming up? Did he come up to you and just say, "Hey, great job," or was this like? But he was very welcoming, at least in to me personally. But was it the same for you? Was it?
He was very He was always stoked, very happy. He's a real hype man. He was very encouraging and very supportive, and he would always put a smile on your face for sure. Very, very happy, very very supportive of everything, and he loved doing. It was his passion to take pictures and document all that stuff. He loved doing it, and it all came from him, and he never. I don't think he really made much of it financially, but that was just his passion project that he liked to do,
And I think we recognized that obviously really, really early on, and knew that he was an outstanding photographer. And we wanted to use him for the Into the Aquatic Sector record. And I don't remember how we chose the location of the photo shoot, but I
remember Angie recommended that spot, and we went there because we all met up. I think it was at their apartment, and she's like, just go to that brewery over there, whatever, that warehouse spot, and that's where we went. So it was Angie who was the one who came up with the location.
Interesting. So obviously they lived right next to, so it's off of.
Yeah, because it was super close to the airliner too. It's literally across the freeway. It's across the street from there. It's super local to the airliner and their apartment that they used to live in. So
Right.
yeah.
Right, and it's like right off the freeway. It's like super convenient to go to, and we had never been there. I specifically had never been there. I didn't.
I still sometimes for work I'll drive by that freeway and I'll see the brewery sign and I'll always remember that, like, hey, that's where we had our photo shoot. That's pretty, it's pretty cool.
It's I don't know if it's like a movie studio at the same time too, because they had these like weird warehouses and just like that weird ass fan that obviously we took in my opinion, the iconic shot that you see on the back of the cover. But it was just, they had all these weird...
it was mostly like warehouse lots, but they were just occupied by a bunch of fucking artists. That was a cool thing. It was just a fucking hip, modern hipster art location. So, it's just a place full of artists. So, artists recognize artists. That's why that guy, I think, approached us so openly and, was stoked to have the photo shoot in his warehouse space.
Right. Well, we didn't even mention that aspect.
Because I remember while we were there, one of the warehouse spots was completely wide open, and they had like cooking classes going on. So it was like a bunch of artist stuff. There's painters, sculptors, and whatnot. It was like a cool, like studio rental area, but for just any variety of art.
Oh, wow!
And while we were taking the photo shoot, and Alejandro alluded to this. What he's referring to is there was a gentleman who was like watching us take the photos, and he approached us and said, "Hey, I got a cool location that I think would work, for you guys. I got the key. Would you be interested in shooting in it?" And then of course we said, absolutely. And so we do the, a couple shots and whatnot. We go in, he unlocks the door, and it's like this wide warehouse area with a bunch of like wood planks. And you remember how like that tiny ass...
Yeah, it looked like he did woodworking there or like built furniture or something, because it was just full of like wood tools and chisels and saws and just wood everywhere.
And so there's a staircase, remember? And then like that little beam, it was like had like what, 4 feet or whatever. I was always afraid I was going to fall off of it.
Yeah, so are you referring to where we took that staircase shot?
Yes.
The photo with the staircase, yeah. Yeah, that, like I said, like that guy was a fellow artist, and he recognized that we were doing that, and he helped us out, and we got cool photos out of it.
That's what was so cool about that whole experience, and obviously the big old building that you can see from the freeway is like a rock climbing place, from my understanding, or was at that specific time. It was like a rock climbing facility. Really strange, really random, but I remember.
I remember something with rock climbing.
Yeah, and I do too. But
it wouldn't surprise me if that was there. It seems to be the type of scene to have that.
And I specifically remember taking a couple shots from that fan area. Remember the big old fan in the background, and I remember thinking to myself as those shots were being taken that one of these could potentially be the one. And I don't remember how we ended up choosing the one shot to showcase that specific, lineup and whatnot. But to me, that's one of my favorite shots in our career, period.
I don't remember. I think if I remember correctly, I found out once I held the product in my hand and I flipped the back of the CD, and that's the first time I saw it. I don't think I had anything to do with that, but that was the right picture to use out of all the ones that we took that day. I would have agreed to use that one as well.
And
for sure.
Do you remember leaving the facility? Because I kind of do. I remember when the photo shoot aired, or obviously we did the photo shoot. And of course, Adrian doesn't like to be paid for some reason. He loves his work, and God bless him. And rest in peace to him. But I remember he didn't like to get paid for some reason. He was just, he just loved to do what he did. So obviously we paid him. Yeah, we paid him though. I remember specifically giving him money, handing him and saying, "You're taking this." And that was that. And we went back to our cars and put all the albums together, and that's what transpired, was that whole that's pretty much it in a nutshell with this album. And, obviously it's held up in high regards over the years. I mean, it's been out of print for ages. And, and I think No Life Till Metal Records to me, I think they did an outstanding job, with this whole thing. And when I was approached initially to, that this was getting reissued, I wanted new album artwork on it, because I always felt like the album artwork could have been better, like a better representation to the music, the sound, everything about it. So I think when I approached Tony Cole about this, because he had always said, this album cover is terrible, I want to redo it for you at a certain point. I said, awesome. So myself and Tony, been friends for a long time. And when I was approached about this, I said, hey, Tony, we're getting ready to reissue this. I would like new album artwork. I think this is the right time to do it. And when I approached him, he was like all about it. He's seen the original. I said, make this, but better. Same concept, same everything. And to me, that's the only artwork that is going to be used on it going forward. So if you have the original, great. It's awesome. But to me, this is the album cover.
Flash it up again real quick.
Yeah, I'll do it right now for the folks that.
Sorry, I was trying to take a screenshot and I kept fucking up.
All good. But so my initial point is this represents just everything about it. It encompasses so many different things for me, and so many people, disagreed with me, even wanting to do a new cover for it. And I think I made the right decision as far as that goes, because now I can't unsee it like this. You know what I mean?
Right.
Yeah, it's great. I love it. It's fantastic.
And Tony's such a graphic. He makes his art so graphic.
And he makes it beautiful.
He really
Yeah.
He really kept everything about the original and made it better, for sure.
And it's a different aspect to his art that doesn't get showcased a heck of a lot, because he's known for doing like bloody, gory album covers, and not like, I don't know. I love his artwork. But in closing, I want to thank everybody for coming on, and hopefully we can do this again when our new projects are out and whatnot. Shannon, thanks very much again for doing this and wanting to be a part of this. Now, before we sign off here, Alejandro, what do you have coming up as far as your musical stuff goes?
So we're currently working on a new record. We have a few songs done. We have a few ideas, and we're pretty much in the writing process. And then once that's done, we're gonna start getting ready to record. And then aside from that, we're just looking to play shows and get our name out there a lot more than it is currently.
Sure. And Shannon, lastly, what do you have coming up?
I was finishing up the album that we've been working on, starting new stuff. Everything's looking so good. Everything's positive. So yeah, we're getting ready. Almost time to play live too, hopefully soon. But
I'm looking forward to it. But gentlemen, I want to thank you both again for coming on the show and for another episode of Poppitt's Corner, guys. We're out of here. Cheers.